Welcome to my YouTube channel, which is titled Research Methods Class with Dr. Lydia Wabugu. In this class, we discuss everything social science research, from understanding the research discipline, research philosophy, the elements of scientific research, and the methodologies of conducting research. In research methods, we have a book titled Research Methods, Theory and Practice. This book is accessible through the website, where you can access the hard copy of the book or a downloadable PDF format of the book. In the same website, you are able to access all the courses, which includes the free Research Methods course, IBM SPSS Statistics course, M&E Consultancy course, which are available at a fee. Please find the links in the description. Welcome. Welcome to our lesson today, where we are going to discuss interviews, and this will be the second method of data collection. Remember, in our previous 3 lessons, we have discussed questionnaires. Just like questionnaires, interviews relies on people to give the information. In our just concluded lesson, we have discussed Likert scales. Remember, these are part of questionnaires, and we have explained the meaning of a Likert scale, guidelines to be followed when constructing a Likert scale, and finally the myths around or about Likert scales. In this lesson, we are going to look at interviews. But before then, let us familiarize ourselves with the learning outcomes. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to differentiate between an interview and a conversation, state the types of interviews, identify the structures of interviews, and explain the skills that are required when one is conducting a face-to-face interview. Interview is a method of data collection where questions are asked to elicit a response. During in-depth interviews, the person being interviewed is considered the expert, and the interviewer is considered the student. The researcher's interviewing techniques are motivated by the desire to learn everything the participant or the person being interviewed can share about the research topic. The interview is a flexible tool for data collection because it enables multisensory channels to be used. That is verbal, non-verbal, spoken, and heard. And in that way, the researcher is able to collect an in-depth information regarding the phenomena. What is the difference between an interview and a conversation? Though interview is a conversation between the interviewer and the interviewee, there is a very big difference between the two. Interviews, unlike a normal conversation, is formal and it is guided by research question, whereas a conversation can be informal on a very general topic. Another difference is that interviews, being formal piece of research, requires that the participants must give their consent to participate in the interview and also allow the researcher to use their words as data to answer the research questions. That is not there in a normal conversation. What are the types of interviews? There are majorly 3 types of interviews. The first one is structured interviews. Structured interview is like a questionnaire which is administered orally. This interview does not allow probing, and the interviewer strictly follows the sequence of questions in the instrument. This method is more appropriate in quantitative research, and it uses an interview schedule as an instrument. The second type is semi-structured interviews. Just like in structured, the interviewer has a list of questions that he or she poses to the interview. However, it allows the interviewer to be flexible in the order of asking the question, and also allows the interviewee to elaborate their points of interest. And the last one is unstructured interviews. In this type, the emphasis is on the interviewee's thoughts, and the researcher uses an interview guide as an instrument. When we talk about an instrument guide, it means that the researcher lists some of the questions that will guide the interview, but he or she will keep probing the interviewee based on the research question. So the researcher normally asks the question based on the response of the interviewee. This method is more appropriate in qualitative research, and we have said the instrument that is used to conduct an unstructured interview is called an interview guide. What are the forms of interviews? There are again three main forms of interview. One is one-on-one interviews or one-to-one interview, which involves a meeting between one researcher and one informant. Then we have group interviews, which involves a meeting between one researcher and a group of interviewees. And then we have focus group. Focus group is normally a discussion, and this we shall discuss in details in our next lesson. Remember that these interviews can be physical meeting or they can be held online. What are the skills for face-to-face interview? Before the interview, make sure that you familiarize yourself with the setting in which the interviewee works or lives or engages in the behavior of interest to you, and ensure that the interviewee will be free to give the information without the fear of being overheard. Secondly, get a good tape recorder, but ensure that you seek consent to record from the interviewee. And finally, prepare yourself for the interview by rehearsing the questions of the interview so that there will be coherence and sequence in the way you ask the question. Note that it would tire the interviewee if you keep going back and forth while you are asking them the questions. During the interview, make sure that 1. You are very attentive. Do not get distracted during the interview. Secondly, be sensitive to the feelings of the interviewee. Thirdly, tolerate silence. As a qualitative method, non-verbal communication is key. Silence may be an indicator that the interviewee holds so dearly the issue that is being discussed. Therefore, the interviewer needs not to panic or become anxious when the interviewee goes silent, but they should allow time to the interviewee until they are in a position to resume the interview. Do not be too quick to say something to kickstart the conversation. Fourthly, be able to probe. Probing is very key in qualitative research because it relies on meanings that are created by the participant. Probing allows the interviewee to give his or her thoughts, opinions, and attitudes towards a topic in a more detailed manner. Be non-judgmental. The interviewee should take care not to show disgust, surprise, pleasure, or displeasure through facial gestures during the interview. 6. Allow everybody to give their points when using focus group discussions or group interviews. How do you start and end the interview? Before the actual interview with the key informant, ensure you have prepared the recording equipment and arranged the sitting position. This is called the pre-interview phase. The interviewer should note that trust and rapport are two key words. Therefore, ensure that as you start the interview, you say hello to your respondent or to your interviewee, introduce yourself, state why you are conducting the interview, and why the interviewee is critical in this research. Then allow him or her to introduce him or herself if he had not done it before. Kick off the interview with easy questions. For instance, their role and how it relates to the research before delving into the more abstract concepts. After the interview, ask the interviewee if they have any points to raise that may improve the research, then thank them for their time to participate in the interview. How would you determine that the information from the interviewee is true? It is absolutely not possible to determine the truthfulness of a person's attitude, feelings, and opinions. However, for other types of information, the interviewer can determine their credibility by 1. Triangulation. That is, use more than one method of data collection. Observation and document analysis can be two good methods that can corroborate interview data. Check the plausibility of the data. Meaning, is the data being given by a person who is an authority in that area, or are they talking about something of which they have little knowledge? And thirdly, conduct a number of interviews. The researcher should avoid basing their findings on only one interview. A number of interviews are likely to bring out the themes much more clearly. And that brings us to the end of our lesson. In this lesson, we have discussed interviews as a method of data collection. We have explained the meaning of interviews, types of interviews, structure of interviews, and skills for face-to-face interviews. In our next lesson, we are going to discuss focus group discussion. But before then, make sure you visit the researchmethodsclass.com website, where you can watch the full research methods course. You can also access other courses on SPSS and M&E consultancy. You are also able to book for consultation, and you can also buy the research methods ebook. See you in our next lesson as we discuss focus group discussions.